reason for my interest in the Mahabharata is that the Mahabharata is obsessed with dharma. Now, dharma, of course, means many things. It means law, it means duty, it means righteousness, it means balance, and so on. It means it has many meanings. And the meanings also change. In fact, while the epic is going on, the meanings are changing, so it's very confusing. But essentially, the epic is very concerned with doing the right thing. Very concerned. You know, in the Greek epic, if the hero does something wrong, he gets on with it. Achilles mistreats Hector terribly. Gets on with it. And then Mahabharata, the action stops, and the argumentative Indian takes over. And everybody wants to know what happened, and no, that's what went wrong, and why did Bhishma do this, and what would sage Kashyap have to say about it, and so on. So it's a work which is quite unique. The third reason for the Mahabharata is that the Mahabharata, nobody in the Mahabharata says, let's ask God about what is the right thing to do. In the Christian tradition, or in the Islamic tradition, or in the Jewish tradition, the answer is 10 Commandments. Let's ask God, and His word is the one. But in the Mahabharata, you're left to yourself. Each character has to try to figure it out for himself or herself. And this, what does this do? Is it actually improves the process of reading the Mahabharata, actually improves your moral reasoning. And a lot of moral thinking is about reasoning. What really went wrong. So therefore, actually, Amartya Sen, who's been saying this for some time, is right. There's a huge tradition of rationality in the classical Indian tradition. Anyway, so I decided to interrogate the Mahabharata. And I used the word interrogate, and I thought, now where would I go to interrogate the Mahabharata? The logical place, you might say, would be Benares. But I knew about the Pandits of Benares. The Pandits of Benares would want me to go back to the hallowed wonder that was India. And, you know, I felt that I was not reverential enough to the text for them. And then, of course, as I did my research, I came to the conclusion, helped by one individual, which was a very famous man I admire, who's now dead, was A.K. Ramanujan, a poet and a translator. And he had said that if you don't find eternity in Benares, you'll find it in the Regenstein Library at the University of Chicago. University of Chicago has very, very fortunate in having great Sanskrit scholars. Some of them I may not be there now, but when I was there, I was very fortunate to be in their company. And so I suggested to my wife, why don't we take an academic holiday? Now, she knew about our usual holidays, where we took green guides and blue guides and trudged up and down stones of Khajuraho or Angkor Wat or wherever. But this idea of an academic holiday was frankly bizarre. So she said, isn't it a bit late to be having a midlife crisis? Anyway, at the end she was a good sport. We went off to Chicago, and for the next couple of years, I basically read the Mahabharata. I had been fortunate to have had some, at least I had lost the fear of Sanskrit when I had been an undergraduate and I had been introduced to Sanskrit by the great scholar Daniel Ingalls, with whom I studied. And I'd also done philosophy, moral philosophy as a subject. So it was going back to the intellectual roots. And after 6.5 years, 7 years almost, this is the product. And what I do in this book are a number of different things. One, I tell the story. But I tell the story in a different way. I let the text speak. See, when you read the Mahabharata, or when you see the Mahabharata by B.R. Chopra or Ramanand Sagar, or even Rajagopalachari's version, etc., what we are hearing is somebody else speaking. This is what Draupadi said to Yudhishthira, etc. Here, you actually hear the words that Draupadi says to Yudhishthira. And these are very powerful. And they come through even in translation. So I've quoted the book. I've quoted the original text. And sometimes the original I've kept in the footnotes, and the translation is in the text. And it really proves to you that this is a classic. Because one idea of a classic is that it comes through in translation. I mean, we don't know Russian, but we read War and Peace, and it comes through, Tolstoy comes through. So same thing here, that in translation, the Mahabharata comes through. And I hope that after some of you who will read this, will also have a desire to go and read the epic itself. It's a very frustrating epic, because it is, first of all, too long. And secondly, there is the central story, but there's a hell of a lot more around it. And suddenly, the poet decides to tell you the names of the 65 allies of the Kauravas. Now, reading 65 names, so good idea to skip all that. Or suddenly he'll tell you the names of all the trees that he knows in Ujjain. So it's a bit of an encyclopedia. And you really get a feeling for things that are going on at that time. The basic approach I take in this book is that as I tell the story and I reach a certain point, I take that one character in that chapter at a point of a dharma sankat, or moral dilemma, or a moral problem that character is facing. And I do what the Mahabharata also does. I stop the story. And then I ask myself, well, what is going on? What is going on in the epic? So, for example, the first chapter is called Duryodhana's Envy. Now, you will remember, many of you, that Duryodhana is, Yudhishthira is performing his Rajasuya sacrifice, which is, of course, he has become, and he's being consecrated as king of kings, as an emperor. They've won, the Pandavas have won many victories, they've consolidated themselves. So all the kings and sovereigns around are invited for this. And Duryodhana, of course, also, he's a cousin, is invited for this. And he's this magnificent palace built by Maya. And he begins to feel envy of the Pandavas. And he gets very depressed. And so Shakuni asks him, what's your problem? Why are you looking so glum? He says, well, look at this. He says, in fact, I will read you what exactly that one line that he says. He says, what man of metal will stand to see his rivals prosper and himself decline.